Welcome to the Justice Room. Your life, your rights, your options. Experience and learn from discussions with legal professionals and other experts about the law, its challenges, and how it could affect you. Here at the Justice Room. Welcome to the Justice Room. Welcome to the Justice Room. This is your host, Jay Jacome. I have brought Mr. William Orth, attorney at law, back to the show to discuss violations of probations and what could happen to you if you violate a condition of probation. Welcome to the show, Mr. Orth.
Hi, Jay. Thanks for having me.
I'm glad to have you back again. We talked a little bit today about the technicalities behind a violation of probation. Tell me a little bit about if someone is charged with a crime, they pled out to a violation, or excuse me, they pled out to whatever the charge was, and now they're on probation.
Yes.
What happens?
Well, when you're on probation, you could two things. Well, you could get what's called a violation of probation, and that has two components to it. You could have what's called a technical violation of probation. Those are things like not reporting to your probation officer, not paying any court fines or fees or costs of supervision.
Now, what happens if you're violated because of a court fine? And let's look at the economy today. The economy today, there's thousands of people that are unemployed. So if they violate because of not paying a fine, does the court even look at you being unemployed as a?
Well, they do, and that kind of gets into what the burden of proof is and what the state or the prosecutor would have to prove to find you in violation of probation, or for the court to find you in violation of probation. And if you take money, for example, in order for you to be found guilty of a violation of probation or found in willful wanton violation of probation, the court let's talk about financial situation. The court would have to find that you had the ability to pay a court fine or a court fee or a cost of supervision and just simply chose not to. The state would have to prove that before the court can find you in willful violation of probation. And what would happen is possibly, if the state's not able to meet that burden, the court might find a violation of probation but may find that it's not willful and substantial, which means you can't be punished for the violation of probation and it would be dismissed.
But what are the differences in the burden of proof between a violation of probation and, say, the burden of proof in a court of law when you're going through a trial?
Well, when you're facing the original charge, the burden of proof is beyond a reasonable doubt.
Mm-hmm.
In a probation or violation of probation, the burden is essentially preponderance of the evidence.
Okay, preponderance of the evidence meaning, can you explain that a little bit, the preponderance of the evidence?
Basically, the beyond a reasonable doubt is a very high standard of proof in order to find you guilty of an actual charge. In a violation of probation, it's more of, a very easy analogy is kind of like, think of a baseball game. Beyond a reasonable doubt would be basically you've got to beat somebody like 9-2. Beat them by 7 runs. In a violation of probation, if you win 6-5, that's good enough.
Okay.
You could be found in violation of probation.
I see. So now, what are your rights if you violate probation?
Well, basically, if you violate probation, you have some of the same constitutional rights. You have the right to an attorney, some of those things, but you may not necessarily have the constitutional right to a bond if you're arrested for a violation of probation. Meaning, if you're arrested and put in jail, the court doesn't necessarily have to give you a bond, whether it's technical violation or a new law offense. You may sit in jail until you go to court on a hearing on that violation of probation.
Yeah, how long could that be? If somebody's in jail for 45 days or 4 months, is that?
It depends on the docket, to be honest with you. You could be sitting there for a month. It could be 2 months. It could be 3 months. It's really hard to say, and it depends on, if your attorney needs time to prepare for a violation of probation hearing or something along those lines.
Okay. What if a new violation happens? What are some of the typical? Now, we talked a little bit about technical violations. Now, what if you commit another offense?
That's a new law violation, and that's an interesting situation because not only are you going to get prosecuted from the standpoint of beyond a reasonable doubt for the new law violation. Let's say you get arrested for a battery offense.
Okay.
In order to be found in violation of probation, the state has to prove that you committed a battery. technically, even though a new charge might get dismissed, let's say you get charged with domestic violence and the state ultimately drops that charge or null process that charge, that doesn't necessarily mean that the violation of probation is going to go away, because does that make sense? That the burdens of proof are different.
Okay, but now...
Although in reality, a lot of times if the new charge gets dismissed or null processed by the state, the violation of probation more often than not is going to get dismissed, or the person would be reinstated back onto probation. It doesn't mean that your probation term necessarily ends, but if you are only 1 year into a 2-year probationary term on a felony, they might just put you on probation, back on probation to finish your probation term.
Let's use a different example. Let's say, for example, that someone commits again, we'll use battery, okay, and it's not null processed, and in other words, dismissed or not filed on you, and you're undergoing that charge. The violation of probation doesn't have a bond, which means that you're going to stay in jail the whole time that you're there because of the violation of probation. Is that what happened?
Possibly. You might get a bond on the new charge.
Okay.
And I know that doesn't make sense to people, but you may not necessarily get a bond on the violation of probation.
Okay.
And obviously, you're not going to want a client to post bond on a new charge, yet still sit in jail on it, because you're not getting credit for time served on that new charge.
Okay. And I have to ask you this question, because a lot of people have always asked me this. Probation officers have, in essence, a similar or the same, authorities as a police officer would, except that now, you tell me, but it's my understanding that a probation officer, when they visit your home, you don't necessarily have the same rights.
Correct. When you're put on probation, sometimes you hear the judge say that they're authorizing the probation officer to search a person or their room or home or something to see if they're in possession of illegal items or contraband or anything that would lead to a violation of probation. You're not necessarily going to have the same Fourth Amendment protections against search and seizure if you're on probation.
Okay, so they can come in and search your home and you have nothing you can do about it.
You show up for your probation appointment and they may ask you to take a drug test, and you can't necessarily, if you refuse it, it's as if they're going to treat it as a positive.
Okay, and so if they come to your home and they want to search your home and you don't let them into your master bedroom, that's a violation.
Potentially.
Okay, it could be.
It could be, yeah,
definitely. So if they come to your home and they want to search your vehicle, and you say, no, I don't want you to search my vehicle,
that you don't have the right to deny that.
You don't have any rights at all.
No, unfortunately you don't. I mean, you have rights, but not when it comes to search and seizure. There's certain rights that you may be giving up while you're on probation.
So then, to wrap up the show on violation of probations, what are the typical violations? What if someone is on probation? What would your recommendation to these people be?
And a recommendation in terms of what?
And meaning some simple conditions that would cause them to violate their probation.
I would tell people, if you're on probation, you need to follow the rules very carefully. Make sure you show up to your probation appointment. Don't commit any new crimes. I mean, you'll sometimes hear judges say, in fact, there's a judge in Seminole County that'll tell people that if I'm on probation, I'm not even going to jaywalk if I were.
Okay.
You just need to basically make sure that you're within the law, you don't violate any laws, and you need to do the right thing.
So if you're on probation and you have a medical appointment, or your daughter is sick, or your son is sick, or whatever, okay, can you call your probation officer and say, hey, my daughter's in the hospital, my son's in the hospital, and that be an excuse to not show up to an appointment?
Yeah, you can definitely call your probation officer, and you're going to get excused from an appointment or something along those lines.
Okay.
Yeah, definitely.
All right. Again, I'd like to thank you for coming on the show and talking a little bit about violations of probation. I'd like to thank you again. If you'd like to reach Mr. William Orth, you can reach him at his office. The law office is of William S. Orth. You can reach him via telephone at 407-772-0000, or you can visit his website at www.williamorthlaw.com, or you can reach him also through the website on the Justice Room. I'd like to thank you for listening to another episode of The Justice Room.